This map of 17th century India shows a subcontinent dominated by giants. The landscape is entirely controlled by massive, deeply entrenched superpowers. Warfare was a numbers game. Empires like the Mughals and Adil Shahis relied on massive, slow-moving armies and heavy artillery to crush their enemies. Into this landscape steps a young leader, Shivaji. His mother, Jijabai, raised him on an idea considered treason, Swarajya, or self-rule. But Shivaji had a mathematical problem. His faction of loyalists was a speck next to the hundreds of thousands of soldiers commanded by the incumbents. A conventional head-to-head war would end in immediate eradication. To survive, Shivaji couldn't play by the rules. He had to invent a new playbook, one that turned his enemies' massive size into their greatest vulnerability. While the Mughals dragged slow, bloated supply trains behind them, Shivaji stripped his military down to the essentials. His cavalry traveled light, subsisting on minimal provisions they carried right in their saddlebags. This mobility allowed him to pioneer a strategy he called Ganimi Kava, or guerrilla warfare. Instead of lining up in open fields for sustained combat, his troops relied entirely on speed and surprise. They would launch rapid shock attacks and vanish before the enemy could organize a response. The geography of the Deccan Plateau was the perfect stage for this. The rugged, vertical terrain, dense forests, and broken hills made traditional imperial marching formations physically impossible. Shivaji secured this landscape with a network of around 280 impenetrable rock forts. These functioned as military cantonments and high-altitude observation posts that gave the Marathas advance warning of any approaching force. By weaponizing the environments itself, Shivaji neutralized the Mughals' numerical advantage. In the steep passes of the Deccan, a massive imperial army was reduced to a slow, blind, and highly vulnerable target. But the Mughals adapted. In 1665, the veteran general Jai Singh I arrived with overwhelming force and cornered the Marathas, laying a devastating siege on the Purandar fort. Facing catastrophic casualties, Shivaji did something highly unusual for a king. He capitulated. Under the Treaty of Purandar, he agreed to surrender 23 of his precious forts and traveled to Agra to submit to Emperor Aurangzeb. This surrender preserved his army's strength, secured the survival of his people. It provided the necessary bridge to his later, cunning escape from house arrest in Agra. In asymmetric warfare, pride is a liability. Shivaji understood that preserving the lives of his soldiers and repositioning his forces was always more valuable than fighting a battle he knew he couldn't win. Back home, Shivaji faced yet another threat. The western coastline was entirely exposed to European navies, like the Portuguese and the British, as well as the city fleets. The Marathas couldn't outbuild these naval powers. Constructing massive, heavily armed, deep-holed galleons to fight the Europeans on the open ocean required resources and shipbuilding infrastructure Shivaji simply didn't have. So he applied his logic of terrain weaponization to the sea. He built a green-water coastal navy out of small, shallow-draft vessels like galavats. What they lacked in heavy cannons, they made up for in extreme maneuverability. Instead of fighting in deep waters, Maratha sailors would attack and then flee into shallow coastal creeks. They drew the heavy European galleons in after them, running them aground and leaving them completely stranded. To protect this fleet, he constructed massive sea forts along the shoreline, complete with dockyard facilities and artillery batteries that covered the naval retreats. By forcing the enemy to fight in shallow coastal environments, Shivaji took the superior size and advanced technology of European ships and turned them into fatal liabilities. Maintaining this level of military discipline required strict funding. At the time, large empires paid their commanders with jagirs, grants of land. This decentralized system bred corrupt, powerful landlords who often betrayed the crown to protect their own wealth. Shivaji and the Jagir system entirely outright. Instead, he instituted a professional military where soldiers and commanders were paid directly in cash from the central treasury, and promotions were based strictly on merit, not bloodlines. To generate that cash, he introduced the Ryotwari system. The state measured the land and collected taxes directly from the farmers, cutting out the parasitic middlemen. These administrative reforms created a direct, loyal relationship between the state and the people. This made his network practically immune to the bribes and mass defections that regularly tore apart the Mughal Empire. The culmination of these strategies arrived in 1674. Shivaji was crowned Chhatrapati, formalizing the Maratha Empire and declaring total sovereignty over his lands. Shivaji Maharaj passed away 6 years later, but the systems he built were so resilient that they easily outlasted him. His asymmetric blueprint became the standard operating procedure for the generations that followed. Decades later, leaders like Admiral Kanhoji Angre used Shivaji's exact naval strategies to maintain a stranglehold on the Konkan coast, successfully fighting off the British East India Company and the Portuguese. What began as a tiny rebel faction hiding in the mountains expanded into a massive power, sweeping across the subcontinent to the gates of Delhi. Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj proved that empire building is not a simple contest of numbers. He showed that true, lasting power belongs to the mind that adapts its strategies to turn an opponent's greatest strengths